In this video, we are going to create randomness where our guess starts off random, and when we click lower, it's going to be random between a minimum and a maximum. Likewise, higher, a random between a minimum and a maximum. At the moment in our game, our first guess is always 500. If we click higher, the next guess is always 750. Higher again, it's always 875, and so on. And this predictability in some circumstances is good, but we want to create some randomness in our game, so it's not the same thing over and over. And we can create some randomness by using random.range. So I've given you a link in the resources to the Unity docs. I'm just looking at random.range here. And the rules are slightly different if you're using a float. If we scroll down, compared with if we're using an integer. So when we're using an integer, using random.range will return a value between the minimum and the maximum. And the important point here is that minimum is inclusive and the maximum is exclusive. So if we're returning between 1 and 10, it will give us a value anywhere, including 1 all the way up to 9, because it's exclusive. It doesn't include 10. It will give us the integer that is just below that. So I've given you this link, and I'm going to give you a challenge. The challenge is to make your guess random. Use random.range to make a random guess between max and min. So have a look at the doc. This is a little bit of I'm going to give you the problem. I'll give you a lot of clues. I want you to go and solve this yourself. I really want you to pause the video, take on the challenge. You have everything you need to do this one. So don't sit there and just be like, oh, I'm waiting for Rick to show me the answer to this. Actually dive in and do it. That is how you learn. That is how you improve. That's how you get better. Okay, I'm going to give you some bonus points here for a couple of other things we need to do. If you refactor, here's bonus points for refactoring our guess calculation code to only one place. We currently have the same code in two places. Let me just very quickly show you what I mean there. We currently have our code here and our code here. So we're writing exactly the same code twice. So there's a challenge is to refactor our guess calculation to only have the code in one place. And also for bonus points, stop the computer from being able to guess something that it has already guessed. So if it guesses 500, then we want to make sure that it doesn't guess 500 again. And that will be a slight tweak, just a couple of little additions to our code to make sure that when we're using random.range, we don't allow the computer to guess something we've already guessed. So that's maybe a little bit of a stretch goal there. It's pretty simple code-wise, but this requires you to really think about what's going on and have a look at your logic and figure out a way to stop that from happening. So there is the challenge. I really want you to jump in and take on this challenge, and I'll see you back here when you've got that done. Okay, and you might be sitting there waiting for me to come back and give you the answer. If you're doing that, I want you to really pause the video and jump in and take on this challenge. Okay, this time I am going back to the code. I'm not going to sit there for 5 minutes saying, are you doing the challenge yet? Okay, so what do we need to do? First off, we need to, I'll start by refactoring. So I mentioned that we've got this code is the same as this code. Well, what is this code? This code here is next guess. Next guess is saying have our guess and then display it on the screen. So instead of writing all of this up here, we can just call next guess. That will do the same thing as those two lines, and it cleans it up. We don't have to do this. Our code will work just fine, but this is a good habit to get into, because if we go and change our logic in here and we forget to do it up in where we had it just here, if we forget to do it up in, let me just undo this. If we forget to do it here, then we've got something different here and different there. So wherever we can, we try to have it consistent. I'll just redo my change back to next guess. Okay, so within start game method, we have next guess. Now let's look at our randomness. Down to next guess, we have guess equals max plus min divided by 2. Well, instead of that, I'm going to use random.range, and then parentheses. And you can see after we type our first parentheses, it gives us the clue here. It's looking for min and then max. And cool is that we've actually named our variables min and max. It didn't know that. It just happened to be, we were clever when we named them, so we can say min, comma, max. That's going to choose a random value that is inclusive of min. So at the moment it would be 1 up to max, which is 1000. Let's save back into Unity. I was already on play. Click on play again. Now the first guess is 719. That is definitely random. And then if we click on higher, it's random 970, lower 852. So we can't see an obvious pattern here now, which is great. We've introduced randomness into our game. Very cool. So I mentioned that we had another part of our bonus points, which was to stop the computer from being able to guess an already guessed number. I'm going to click on gameplay, which shows us our max and min variables that are exposed in the inspector here. When I click play, we see that we start off with a guess of 535. My maximum is 1001. Well, that's an issue as well. That's something we'll need to change in a moment. It should be 1000. If I click higher, then my minimum is 535. And you see my guess here now is 562. If I click higher, then our minimum is 562, just as our code is asking it to do. But our minimum shouldn't be 562. It should be what? 563, because we've already guessed 562. That was, there we go. That was our guess. So it shouldn't be the minimum. And because minimum and maximum as part of our random.range is inclusive, it's saying I will include this as part of my guess. It could now guess 562. So if I go lower, 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 it's guessing 562, but it's guessed that already. So hopefully you jumped in and had a look to see what you can do with your logic here. It's pretty straightforward, I think. If we look at our on-press higher, our minimum is going to be our guess. So if we say it's higher, our minimum is now changed to our guess. Let's have a look and see. So if we click higher, it's currently 407. We click higher, our minimum becomes 407. We want it to be one more than that. So we want our minimum to be guess plus 1. And likewise, when we're pressing lower, we want our maximum to be our guess minus 1, so that we don't go all the way up to our guess. Save, back into Unity, click on play. Now, our first guess is 382. When I click higher, the minimum is now 383. That's great. So the lowest we're going to get down to is 383. Cool. And the last thing to do is to check out our edge cases. If we click on higher, what can we go up to? Well, our maximum is 1001. We don't want that. Let's see what happens if we can go down to lower. Our minimum is 1, so we know at the start that would be the lowest we can get down to is 1. Okay, so let's just go and have a look at our logic here. And finally we get to get rid of this somewhat messy max equals max plus 1. If we just delete that, save. Now, I believe when we play our game, the maximum will be 1000. Yes, and the minimum is 1. Cool. So guess all the way up to 1000. Excellent. And as a final point, a big thank you to Tiago, who pointed out that because min is inclusive and max is exclusive, we need to have our guess max plus 1 so that we can still go all the way up to whatever our max value is. Thanks for pointing that out, Tiago, and thanks for everyone who points out problems and issues and mistakes I make in my videos. It really helps us make the course much better, so thank you for that. Great work. That's all of our code taken care of. In the next video, we'll just do last little bit of polishing our game, and then I think we're done. Great work, and see you in the next video.